good maintenance. They done a good job. Lady right there. Anything like it's real long. It's real sharp, but actually it wasn't cut you. But it stabbed.
Hold in your hand.
It had a handle on it. And wrapped it. Well, too late, that's actually done.
I guess this time's well,
I'll show you. Sometimes you'll see. Yeah, they got a 5, excellent driver. Steering committee on me tomorrow.
About that now.
yes.
That's the first time I've seen it.
social distancing, so wear a mask if you feel like you need to. A little hot up here, apologize for that. Open the windows and turn the fan on a little earlier, cool that. Some maybe it'll cool that a little bit, a little quicker. What we're going to do tonight is we need to come to a decision on the school roof. We have several options on that. We'll take a look at that and try to come to a consensus on it as to what direction we want to take. And also, the mayor will give an overview of the budget or present his budget, and we'll start taking it basically page by page. See if there's questions or problems with it. My intentions are not to call in every department or every elected official unless there's questions about their budget that need to be addressed by them. I think if their budget looks good to us, if we don't have questions on it, we'll just proceed with it. Plan right now is for Thursday to meet again from 6 till 8. Have the sheriff go over the sheriff's budget and the school budget. That's our two biggest ones and the ones that we typically have the most questions or new things with. Then we'll have also next Monday, if we need to, and I think we'll probably will some little bit, but hopefully we can finish this up next Monday. That's kind of the game plan. May not know whether that's going to work, but that's where we're at. Right now we're scheduled to have a steering committee meeting tomorrow night. I really don't have a lot to bring to steering. It may be that we could do away with it this month. Mayor, do you have anything that needed to go before steering that you're aware of?
The only thing I could think of would be sending to the committee for resale of land and some property the county's had for quite a while. I don't know, we got some inquiries on it, but it's waited this long, I don't see that being that pressing at this moment.
I mean, under the circumstances, I hate for it to be, there's really no reason to. And we needed to go ahead and schedule. It's a lot easier to cancel something than it is to call it at the last minute. So we're kind of reserving that date tomorrow night for that if it was a need for it. But I really don't see the need for it. We still have a work session as planned. And of course, anything that's on the agenda pretty much is carryover from last month so far. Not a lot of new things. So that's kind of where we're at with this. So if everybody's okay, we won't have steering tomorrow night. This means yes, this means no. Everybody good with that? Okay. Cool. All right, Mayor, when do you want to go into the school roof financing first? Is that okay? Seems to be our most pressing piece of business.
Well, that's the first item on the agenda after the minute, so.
Got to get closer to the microphone. You need a little bit back there, man.
Thanks. Let's see here. We had to get a new schedule for the roof. The last one expired on May 1st. Asked them to send us something that lasts a little bit longer this time. This one should expire in June. The rates did go up. The capital outlay note, it's not, if you do it without including architect fees, $989,873. For a 10-year term, it's 2.92%. For a 12-year term, 12-year term is 3.06%. That's the same whether you include the architect's fees or not. On the 10-year and 12-year, the rates stay the same. If you flip over, look at the first schedule for $9,899.
Does everybody have this? Have a copy of this? There's some more copies, I believe. Sorry, Mayor, I didn't mean to.
I got more way.
Just before you get to one, did you? It's what I put.
It'd be on page 1. It's a bond debt service, Hartsville, Trousdale County, $989,873, 10 years at 2.92% over the 10-year term, with principal and interest being $1,154,311.63. If you flip over to the next page, which would be should say 989,873, 12 years at 3.060%. Over 10 years with principal and interest, $1,197,060.76. Now both of those are without the architect's fees included. For the 10-year with the architect's fees included at 2.92%. Over 10 years, principal and interest due would be $1,223,799.27. Now on the last page for the 12-year note, including the architect's fees, at 3.060%, you $1,268,126.91. Again, it just depends on whether you want to roll in the architect fees with it or not at this point, as to what the amount's going to be and whether you want to do it on a 10-year or a 12-year. And these numbers are good through June 16th.
Whichever one you go with, you still got to borrow the full amount in order to take care of the 10% contingency fee. And then at the end of the thing, that can be put back in there.
Yeah,
I understand it.
There's a term they can put into these, and I asked them to put it in there when it goes out, that if we borrow that full amount at the end of that process, if we have not used that contingency fee or whatever we got remaining, we can submit back to the lender, and that'll reduce our debt amount.
That's the way I understood it. I'd say whichever one of these is cheaper for us would be the way to go.
The architect fees, that overall, that's gonna be $200,000.
No, the architect fees will be 6%, and it becomes roughly $60,000.
From a million, whatever, $1,800,000, and then the final is $1,223,000.
Well,
one number is, if you look at it,
without the 10-year, it would be $1,154,000 without architect fees on 10 years. With them adding into it, the total payback would be $1,223,799. So that's what that difference is architect fees and the interest on that $60,000 on the principal.
if you don't include
That's on the 10 year.
if you don't, sorry, I was gonna say, the principal amount, if you look at that column at the bottom, that's what would actually be the amount that was bid to get the project done. That includes the contingency. That 989,783, that's the bid amount with the 10% contingency on it, but that does not include the 6% architecture fees. That's on the second set of numbers I gave you with, if you include the architect's fees, it would be $1,049,170. That's just the principal, which would be the bid amount plus the contingency plus the architect's fees. The number on the full far right column at the bottom, that's over the 10 years with principal and interest added into it over the term of the loan.
So right now, this is the two we're looking at, the difference in including architect fees in this set, whether it's 10 or 12 years, and excluded here, where we come up with 60,000 more there. So we have to bring this.
Well, if you include the architecture fees, it'll just roll into the principal amount, and you'll be paying it over the term of the loan.
And paying interest on it as well.
Yeah, you'll pay interest. Anything that's included on that, you're gonna pay interest on the term. So the first question, I guess, is do you want to include the architect's fees or not include the architect's fees? Which if you're not going to include them, then it's $60,000 up front. Now, is that going to be covered by the school? Is it going to be covered by the county? I think that's what Dr. Satterfield's question was when we had our meeting when we got the first rates. Once you make that decision, then you're going to look and see is it going to be the 10-year or the 12-year?
Typically, the architectural fees are added into the cost of the project.
I'm looking for the architect.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the difference in these two sheets back there, whether it's in or it's not, whether they are from, I'm always myself, if there's any way we can, less that to pay on any interest in any, my own use.
Mayor, what is your brother?
I am a little bit concerned if we're going to go ahead and do the 60, as I said, the first decision has going to be made is the schools paying that or is the county going to be paying that? And I know what Dr. Satterfield had suggested is that if they pay the architect's fees, then it comes off that first year payment that they're going to make, which if you do the 10 years, $114,480. So you take roughly $60,000 off that. That's what they'd want to pay. So that would mean the first year the county would be making up the difference if that's the route you want to go.
Anyway, it's $60,000.
The $60,000 coming from somewhere. If you're paying it up front, if you're not rolling it into the loan, then it's coming on in. But as you said, you're paying interest on that $60,000 for 10 years.
What we talked about in the beginning of that, since we didn't have the money in place, we let the school board go on and pay that upfront money there, and then at the end, we'd settle up on them, and they would go ahead and pay the first year's fee. That's what we talked about in the meeting.
Well, I think it's 6 one another, half dozen other. If they give us $120,000, whatever the first year's payment is, and we turn around and take $60,000 debt to pay for the architect's fee, or we give them $60,000 to recover it, it's the same difference. You know, we're going to be covering the architectural fees. It's just, they're going to be paying the first year's payment. So it's 6 to 1, half dozen others. The big question is, do you want to try to find money in the budget to fund $60,000? They're making the first payment, then we'd have $60,000 to come up with to cover those architectural fees, which is a big jump. I mean, what we had planned to do from the beginning was, try to do this on 10, no more than 12 years. Architectural fees would be added into it. We feel like that it probably won't go to the maximum of this. That was a high contingency amount because of the age of the buildings is primarily why that was added in. I have no strong feelings myself, whether it's 10 years, 12 years, because it's open-ended. If we decide we want to pay more on the principal, we are allowed to do that. So technically we could set it up for 12 years. That's what you're obligated to, but if you needed to pay it off sooner, or you wanted to, or saw that you were able to, you would be able to. But, my question is which one is more palatable in a dollar amount, the 10-year or the 12-year? Ms. Buckman?
I'm just gonna throw this out here. When we made this agreement, Dr. Satterfield, we agreed at a $800-something roof, and it's now approaching $1 million. Well, it's the cost of it, not financing. It was in the $800,000 range. Dr. Satterfield, would the school board be willing to pay that engineering fee and still make the first year's payment, given the increase in the cost of the roof?
Let me get a more of that. Mr. Buckmaster, first of all, is something I would have to talk to the board about that hadn't been in agreement. But I think one thing that is important, and you and I talked about this a long time ago, I think one of the things when we were first discussing this, and it was very fluid at the time, that we go back to the BEP and the loss of revenue from fiscal capacity due to the prison thing. We go back to that. And we know that there was a lost revenue of $370,000 in FY19. We know that there was a loss of $360,000 in FY '20. The BEP just came out a few weeks ago. That shock has not hit hard in the third year as much as it did from year 1 to year 2. It's a little bit lower. But you could say that, you know, just for rounding purposes, that's another $160,000. FY '21 would look like FY '20. So that would be, if you added those 3 years up, it would be $1,027,000, which is pretty much in the ballpark of what the roof is presently anyway. So the conversation from the beginning was to purchase the roof to make up for the loss in the BEP from the fiscal capacity, and it looks like those numbers are pretty much even where they are.
Did that answer your question?
It was just a question I wanted to know.
But I mean, I can take it to the board, but I would say to them is I'm saying to you that if you look at it over a 3-year period, it's over $1 million, which is right about what the roof is hitting. So it seems like a pretty good Indian trade to me.
Again, I wanted to get the question out
Yes,
there.
sir.
Yeah.
I don't know what the funds all about, Sheriff. What's the school's rainy day fund? How much is in that? Or what do you want to call that fund?
I do not want to answer that now. We're still trying to work our budget up, but I would say it would be in the $2 million range somewhere, but please don't hold me to that.
So my opinion would be wait till we hear what the school budget is, make a decision on the 60,000 and everything else. Because if the money's there for the school to pay for, why are we going to burden the taxpayers?
Anybody else? Mr. Dixon?
Hope I'm making it clear. I thought the board of education was supposed to have a architect fee. And we had to do that. Am I wrong or correct?
The agreement we had, my best recollection, was when the architectural fees came up. They said that they would go ahead and pay them. We would either incorporate them into the cost of the total loan, which is normal, or we would pay them back for them. But they were going to front the money for that, and it'd be part of this loan. That's my recollection. I'd have to go back to the minutes, but that was my recollection. Now, the $850,000 estimate that they had to begin with, it was pointed out repeatedly that it did not include everything. It didn't have demolition in there, it didn't have relocating scuppers and all kinds of things that were going to cost money. We knew. I think we tried to make it perfectly clear that it was going to be more than that, included in that final bid amount, or what was bid on the final bid. Now, it could have come back less. This seems to be a reasonable amount for the type of work and what the work is that's going to be done. From every indication we've had, it is. Now, their agreement was they're going to make the first year's payment. We're not going to have to do that. The question is how really and truly, we already said we were going to roll the architectural fees into it. My only real question is whether we want to do it for 10 years or we want to do it for 12 years. And hopefully it's not going to be this total amount of money because you've got 10% contingency for all of them.
You got $98,000 worth of contingency, which may or may not be used.
Just about.
Mr. Chair, I believe I'd like to see the 989, 873 in 10 years, just due to the interest in the, obviously, slight difference in payments.
Ellie?
I just looked at the same piece here with that on 10 years. The difference on 10 years, that route was 10 years for 60,000, we went to about $9,000 and just off that 60,000, we're talking about $69,487 and 64 cents is really all the difference we're talking about. I agree the payments are just a little bit different, we're talking about $7,000 roughly a year. If we're focusing on that 60,000, we got to do somewhere there than 17, we don't do right now. My statement would be, let's look at this 10-year, look at the end, the $1,223,799.27 would be, seems like the route we're going to have to take for this right now. I will put that in the motion.
If you restate the motion.
That we get this, the motion would be to take this on a 10-year note, would be 60,000 occupation fee included.
Mr. Jewell.
So that would be,
Page one, if mine said, it'd be over the $1,049,760.
second page.
I guess it's the
Where it says, the heading would say 10 years, $1,049,000.
yes.
Okay, so that is the base amount plus architectural fees on a 10-year pay.
Yes.
Okay.
I say that motion.
We have a second from Mr. Ferguson. Sorry. And we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion on this?
I think it's the best way to go.
The thing is, I want everybody to realize there's contingency money built into this. It may not go that amount. If we see that we have extra funds and we want to pay for the principal, we can. So it's, and it's that interest rate, it's pretty good deal, you know, I think. Mr. Mayor, would you like to speak to this anymore? Thank you, Dr. Satterfield.
Thank you.
Just say that, I point out that this is a fixed interest rate, so
Yeah.
obviously there's no quote for a variable because you have no idea what it's going to be from one week to the next. So as far as that goes, whatever the commission decides to do, we'll work with it and find a way to pay for it. Which we're going to have, once we get into the general debt, I mean, we'll see, we're going to have some debt rolling off here this year and next year, so that'll free up some funds to pay for it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Would you do a roll call on this?
Chairman, can you repeat the motion?
The motion was to do the bond debt service, $1,049,170 for a 10-year period. That would be what says page 1 at the bottom, the second page of the package that you received. It's a 10-year finance for basically the total thing. School will be picking up the first year's payment on it. I'm not sure exactly when it'll have to be executed. We do have to let them know we have to execute the loan documents prior to June 16th.
Yes, sir, it says that the issue would need to be closed and funded on or before June 16, 2020.
But they'll set it up like a draw.
And that includes the 60,000?
Yeah. Okay, everybody clear? Can you call, let's do a roll call, please.
Dwight Joel,
Yes.
Jerry Ford,
Yes.
yes. Kim Buckmaster,
Yes.
Shane Burton,
Yeah.
Gary Clary, Bill Ferguson,
Yes.
Bud Gregory,
Yes.
Landon Glover,
Yes.
Richard Carter,
Yes.
Linda Sue Johnson, Gary Walsh.
No.
does carry. We'll have that. Start doing the paperwork on that. Mayor, do you have anything else about that that we need to talk about?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it's not.
Okay, Mayor, you ready to start on the budget?
Yes, sir.
Speak loud.
Well, if you start on page 1, look at the local property taxes, and I will ask for direction here. Are you wanting to go completely line by line, or are we just hitting the kind of the 30,000 foot view here?
Let's start out line by line on the things that need to be, and then I'll leave that to your discretion. I want to know what you put together for us.
Well, we're looking at our current property taxes. You're looking at an increase from last year. Last year, we proposed $2,673,263. This year, we're proposing $2,781,734. And please keep in mind that this is on a preliminary penny value. We will not have the final penny value until May. So we're just going with an estimate of what we think it will bring in at this time. I'll also point out, given that we are in the midst of a pandemic and the state is telling us not to overestimate your revenues, they're really hounding that make sure your revenues are not overstated, because there's a lot of disagreement about what exactly the impact as far as economic impact and revenue wise is going to be, the fallout of COVID-19. So we are trying to be very, conservative on some of these estimates. We kept trustees' collections the same. If you look at the discount on property taxes, we went kind of 1.5% current, so it did go up, and the reason for that is one of the things we've been told by several economists and state organizations is they do expect more people to fall behind on their taxes because they think they're going to get to a point where it's, pay your rent and everything or pay your taxes, and they might fall behind 1 year on their taxes. So we did try to adjust for that as well. So if we go down and look through it, if you look year over year as far as total local taxes, we increased. It was $3,829,941 is what we proposed last year. This year we're proposing $3,937,883, so we did increase our proposal year over year, and that's based on the revenue we saw. And again, that is trying to be conservative on the revenue estimates. We do estimate, based on current trends right now, we will finish the year with $3,999,846 in total local taxes as far as revenue goes. So we're looking really well at this point. Just again, we need to be conservative because we're not sure what the economic landscape is going to be here in a few months. License and permits, we did re-up some franchises. We have another one getting ready to re-up with Piedmont Natural Gas. That's really kind of just standard procedure. It's just they've submitted a proposal. Mr. Beller's looked at it and approved it. It's really just sign off on it. There's a statutory amount as to what your payments are going to be, and I think it's 5% of their total sales inside the county. So like I said, it's just executing that lease and going with that. Yes, sir.
If I'm reading this right, you're going to have a tax increase from 116 to 119.
It's not a tax increase. We actually moved pennies from one fund to another one.
Okay.
We actually moved.
More money in.
Yeah, we actually moved.
More money in.
The highway department was able to cut back a little bit on their revenues. We moved it over to the 101 to try to shore it up a little bit. We also moved 2.5 pennies from the 116, which when we get to it, you're going to see it's in very good shape. So we moved 2.5 cents over from the 116 over to the 101 as well to try to shore it up a little bit. A lot of these things on the second page as far as forfeitures and fines and fees, we just kept those numbers the same because you never know from one year to the next what those are going to look like, so we just kept those amounts. Fines, we did come down a little bit given the trend is less fines, and they haven't had court in a couple of months. So as far as total fines and forfeitures and penalties, we did come down on that revenue some, given the trends we're seeing right now. It was $88,830 last year's budget. We're proposing $81,650. At this point, given trends, we're looking at forecasting 83,916 is what we think is going to come in this current fiscal year. So again, like I said, trying to be on the conservative side, given the directions we've been given, and of course, when you're budgeting, you try to underestimate your revenues and overestimate your expenditures. Looking into the third page, looking at our, excuse me, I'm sorry, with zoning studies, we kept that the same. A lot of things on these pages are going to stay relatively the same with minor increases. Telephone commissions did increase some from 15,000 to 18,000, and that's just given, again, some of the numbers we're seeing. We estimate for this fiscal year it's going to be 27,890. So again, like I said, we went to the conservative side on that. Total charges for current services. This current fiscal year's budget was $26,625. We're proposing $26,425, so we did pull back a couple $100 on that. Again, we think our current year is going to be well over our estimate. We're looking, excuse me, what we budgeted. We're looking at $36,155 is what we're forecasting now. So, and then going through the recurring items. Leases, rentals, commissary sales, those kind of things, we kept those relatively the same. We didn't move those a whole lot. We actually did come down as far as total revenue estimate. This current fiscal year, we budgeted $155,028. We're proposing $144,000, but our current forecast for this fiscal year is $251,406. But some of these items are rental fees and whatnot, which are variable from year to year. Fees in lieu of salaries, these are to county officials. We did go up a little bit on that based on current trends. The current fiscal year, we got $503,000. We're proposing $514,000. Again, what we're looking at as far as forecast wise is $537,612. So as everything else, as I said, we're trying to be kind of conservative on those estimates for revenue. State of Tennessee coming in, I'll ask you to keep in mind, this does not include any of the amount that's set aside in the governor's local support grants. We did not include any of that amount, which is going to be over $585,000 to Trousdale County. That is not included in any of these funds at the time. So I'd ask you to keep in mind there is another revenue source out there, a big revenue source that's not included. One of the reasons why is because it's based, what fund it will go into will be based on what projects we decide to fund with it. So other state revenue, currently fiscal year was $839,787. We're proposing $825,457. And the current fiscal year, we were estimating $492,647. Some of that, if you look at, when we kept a lot of the numbers the same, went up a little bit on the contract prisoner board. Came down, there were some grants we received this year we won't be receiving next year. And a lot of this revenue number was into the home grant, which we have started to spend some of the amount. So as that amount comes down, the state revenue will also come down. It was sitting there, kind of sitting there this current fiscal year. And as we went through the year, we spent those funds off as the projects have started going into construction and consultant fees are paid. So as that amount come down from $500,000 last year, it's down to $436,993. And we expect that revenue hopefully will be well through that project at the end of this year. But as you decrease that revenue, it obviously brings it down in total as far as revenue from the state. Federal government, we had budgeted this current year $135,585. We're proposing $122,000. And a lot of that is coming in from the qualified school construction bond subsidy that will go and pay off one of the debts for so, and we're on current fiscal year, we're forecasting $148,140. Other governments coming in, these are contributions, the rescue squad, donations to the Senior Citizen Center, and other monies coming in. This current fiscal year, we budgeted $17,000. We're proposing $15,000 for the upcoming fiscal year, and right now it looks like we're going to bring in around $21,181. So as far as total revenues to the county, current fiscal year we had $5,677,146. We're proposing $5,775,515. and our current estimate for the fiscal year is $5,683,995. Is there any questions on the revenue line items?
How conservative were you on these figures? Did you reduce them by percentage or just?
Well, some of the, we looked at, as I said, we increased what we thought was going to be the amount of people not paying on their property taxes. Did we look at a percentage? Not really. Some of these have been kept the same for years, and it's based on a set amount, whether it's under a statutory scheme or other amounts. The Piedmont, I don't think we really adjusted it, but it's, as they get more into the county, their revenue is going to go up, and it's based on statutory 5%. So I think we kept that close.
I guess my question is, in lieu of COVID and what the comptroller's office and governor's office has cautioned us to do, do you feel like we've lowered these revenues enough to satisfy them?
I believe we have. One of the things as we go, as I listen on these webinars, one of the things you really hear about, they're really talking about is, well, your tourism dollars are going to go down. We don't have tourism dollars. Your hotel tax revenue is going to go down. We don't have that either. A lot of things we have here were already essential businesses just because that's what we have, given we're a small community. And I do know, in talking to the grocery stores here, they've seen a tremendous increase in business. And so I do think we're going to be okay on that front. We were, like as I said, we tried to be conservative with some of these numbers. If you go through, you can see we did decrease them year over year. Yes, Mr. Ford.
I believe your figures are based on 92% anyway, aren't you?
Well, for the property tax, it's based on the 92%. But some of these other numbers, we came down. As I said, you can go through some of these and you can see that what we forecasted is going to come in, we've come way down on what we're proposing for the next fiscal year.
I believe last year we collected around 98%.
And I think we're on track for about that this year.
So we've got some cushion up there if it were to push on the show.
Yeah, but we do, as we said, and when we get to the end, I think we're sitting in a really good position at the end of this current fiscal year based on projections right now. And that's given, hopefully if we don't have some kind of major catastrophe or something happen. But I do think we've tried to come down and be conservative on these numbers. Like I said, just with the increase in penny value going up, that's going to automatically bring in more numbers, but we did still keep it at the 92%, but we did go up on the line item for people not paying the property taxes this year. But right now, and one of the things the comptroller's office did stress is whatever you pass right now, you're not locked into, you can't do budget amendments. What they're really stressing is try to be conservative on it. Let's get, get down into September or so, look at your numbers. If you need to amend your budget, come back and amend it at that time because we'll have a lot better idea of what the revenues are starting to look like. They're really concerned about the impact of sales taxes and whatnot. So once we get into September, October, we start seeing if people are taking advantage of that 2% early pay discount, then we'll have a lot better idea where we stand. If we need to change something, we can come back and do a budget amendment on it at that time.
I went through all this assessment. I didn't see what your estimated fund balance June 30th is. I'm sure it's here, but I didn't see it. You remember what we're estimating our fund balance to be next June 30th? Not this year, but in the next budget.
I can scroll down. I'm just looking at it on my computer here, so I can scroll down and look at it.
That was very right.
On page 3.
I just want to go down the wall, I'm sure I saw it.
Yeah, we would be estimating June 30th of 2021, we'd be estimating $3,406,780 fund balance.
How much more?
$3,406,780. Now, I would like to point out this current fiscal year, we had budgeted $1,291,599, and that is including some amendments for various funds and expenditures coming in. But right now, we were forecasting an excess of $722,813. So that's why we feel pretty good about where we're standing. We actually think our fund balance is going to go from June 30th of 2019 is going to go from $2,597,494 to $4,611,906 on June 30th of this year. So we feel really good that we've done well on the revenue side, and we are trying to keep down the expenditures as we go through it. The big item you're going to see is I did propose a 2.5% increase for county employees because they haven't been given an increase in a couple of years. There is some major increases in here because statutorily we had to give county officials a raise. They set it out at 3.46% right before the coronavirus hit. I wish they would come back and adjusted those numbers down. However, once they're released, they let them go. So you're going to see that it's really going to be in your labor cost and your benefits. That's where it's going to be a lost cost driver when we get into our budget. A lot of the things I think are in here, these big ticket items, I think we can use the governor's local support grants for. There's a bulletproof vest for the sheriff's department, the ambulance service, once we get into 118, has some items they're wanting to use to improve, upgrade their ambulance service. And there's radios in there for the various first responders, so they went to a new digital radio system, and so now they got to upgrade and change the radio system to meet the new requirements. And a lot of those is just big ticket items like that. When you look at your county officials, other than that labor cost, which is already 70 to 73% of most offices, it's small things. There's computers that have reached the end of their useful life. There's bookshelves that the county register of deeds has got to have because hers is filling up. She's wanting to scan her documents. She's got the last bit of her documents she's wanting to go get scanned. That way, if the building gets hit by a tornado or something like that, the records are online and so they are stored. So there's just some small things like that, but as far as the big ticket items, all the departments, I'm really happy with them. They've tried to limit it, as I said. Like I said, it's just things that they were going to need anyway, such as bulletproof vests for the sheriff's department.
Is the increase in there for the non-certified workers at the schools?
That's what, well, he's left now, but he's over there. I think Dr. Satterfield asked that question, was it a month or so ago, Dr. Satterfield? You and Johnny Curry asked if the 2.5% increase would be intended for that to go to the non-certified. That'd be in the school system. When we said, yes, we did intend for it to go to the non-certified in the school system. I think you went back and run those numbers with the increase in salaries and benefits. It's a little over 40,000, am I correct?
It is, and it only goes to the non-certified.
Right, it was the non-certified because the teachers were at that time getting a 4% raise from the state. They did cut that back to 2% when they actually passed the budget. But
that will be reflected when we have the school budget. One thing that hurt us on this budget a little bit on your salaries to make them look like it's a big jump. It's not so much the increase of the 2.5%, but there's 27 pay periods in next year. So it's like you're having to pay one extra paycheck in this budget because of leap year. This happens, I think it's every 11 years. And every 11 years you do a catch-up and you have 26, because we pay on a 2-week pay period. I know that sounds hinky, but it's like the last one is on, the first one on July 1st and the last one on June 30th next year. And it's just one day made a difference of an extra pay period. So when you're looking at those, if you look at last year's versus this year's, it looks like a big jump. But when you take in that extra pay period, it's not as big a jump as it seems like. I just want to point that out. We want to make sure everybody is aware of that. That's why I put it up at the top in bold, in red, where you can see, not trying to hide anything, it's in there. I have talked to a lot of people about this budget, and I know the mayor has, with the state, and various people. Some of the counties are really struggling. National Davidson County is going to listen, and some of the smaller ones are too. I think because we have a good fund balance, and because we have managed our money well, and because we don't have the cost on these variable things like hotel tax, things like that others are dependent on for their revenues that are just bottoming out. We're probably in better shape than most from everything I can see. We've worked real hard on this. I think it's overall a good budget. I think all the departments have done all they could to try to trim things down. And I think you've got a highlight sheet of the things that are kind of the new out of ordinary things for us to go through. But bottom line, we can give our people the raise that we promised, have planned to do. We've cut our revenue projection, and we're not going to have to raise the property tax rate. I don't know how we can do any better than that, but go, Mayor.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Jewell. That is something I didn't cover when we were going through it, was the 27 pay periods. I'll tell you, I'm not sure I will still completely understand it, but like I said, it's 11 years. It's like something just keeps accumulating, and then at the end of that 11 years, there's a 27 pay period to get the calendar to align correctly. So that does add into what looks like a big jump for your labor costs, but it's not going to be there next year because we're restarting that cycle again. As far as, I will just hit, Mr. Jewell mentioned the kind of the budget notes, and these are just kind of the real big ticket items kind of that I mentioned. As far as the 101 fund, the biggest ticket item, if you're looking at it, for the Sheriff's Department, I think there's about $65,000 in there for Bulletproof Vest. And there's also some money in there for the digital radio switchover that I mentioned with the new communication equipment going on the Pumpkin Branch Tower and the new tower here on Morrison Street. So that has expanded their communications capability throughout the county. They had problems when you get to certain areas such as Cato that they couldn't get communication back and forth, and that should cure that. And this is go to a digital radio system that is compatible with that new communication system.
Make sure I heard that correct. That's going to cover what we were worried about in the Cato area without putting.
It's going to expand it. I'm not going to stand here. I'm not going to sit here and say it's going to fix all the problems, but it's certainly going to expand the coverage. I think before they had talked about that, like if you went to a certain area of Cato, they'd have to turn around and come back Lick Creek Road almost back to 25 before they could get a signal. Last I've heard, they've been able to get in some of those areas, they've been able to get communications without having to come back towards Highway 25. So it has expanded it. I'm not going to say it's covering everywhere. I'm sure there's probably some hollers here and there. Well, in Kentucky, we call hollers. Back up here and there, you get where you're not going to get coverage, and unless you put a tower right on top of that hill, you're probably still not going to get coverage. But it has vastly expanded the coverage in the county. And I'll just defer to Mr. Buckmaster. If I'm incorrect on that, please correct me.
Our radios have not been programmed for that yet.
Okay.
COVID, they've not come in and programmed. They've got the list that not yet.
All right. And that's going just from a couple of conversations I've had with the Sheriff's Department. They do seem to be really happy with the coverage they're getting now, but I suspect there are still some areas here and there that they haven't gone into yet that there's still going to be a coverage gap.
I would like to add that that's still on the analog frequencies as well. These radios are what converts to digital, which is supposed to be even better. And that equipment is capable of digital, but the radios for the squad cars are not.
And then there's also $75,000 for the sheriff's request for 2 new patrol cars. What the sheriff have been doing is kind of like what they're doing in Lafayette, trying to cycle out your vehicles, because Lafayette found that if they cycle them out about every 5 years, they really get rid of the vehicle before the huge maintenance cost hit and the resale value is maintained. So they're actually getting a little bit more bang for their buck when they resell their vehicles. And I think that's what the sheriff, in talking to him, that's what he's trying to do, is make sure he gets that, not to get into the situation like he did a few years ago when we had to go and take out debt to purchase 9 vehicles all at once. He's trying to keep them rotated out, keep that resale value there. Then the next item would be increase the per diem for the fire department. When we had to do the budget amendment earlier this year, we went ahead and put in an overestimate, we believe, for that expense for the fire department, I believe, and I'll have to scroll over, I believe we put it in, it was like roughly $70,000, Ms. Thomas.
Which page you on?
Where you at?
I'm having to scroll to it, I was on the notes document. It should be, if you look where it says account number, it should be 54,310.
Page 23.
It should say page 22 of 72 in the 101.
23, page 23.
And it'll be the first object code under it, it'll be 199. Should say other per diem and fees.
Right.
We had budgeted this current year $56,520, but that was as a budget amendment because we had it came over. So we went ahead and increased that up to $75,000. I do have now more firefighters than I do before. I can get to you just in a minute. We believe that's going to be way over because it has been down so far this year as far as when we reset in, is it November that it resets, Mr. Buckmaster? Since November to now currently, the number of calls are down, so right now that per diem is down at this amount, but given the trend we saw last year, we went ahead and increased that expenditure. That way, if it comes in close to what it did last year, we've already got the money there and we don't have to do it, and if we don't end up not spending it, well, then it stays there in fund balance. There is an item in here for, we did go at $500 on evaluation and testing. That's for new volunteers coming in. We went up $3,000 for maintenance and repair services on vehicles, and that's mainly due to we took and had 3 vehicles serviced, and they found some items that really they didn't know about. It was a good thing there were some seals and valves and things that had to be replaced, and they did fix the vehicles, but we went ahead and increased that just in case that happens again next year. They are requesting what they've called, it's $1,500, and I believe it's other charges. It says e-dispatch software. One of the things I've asked the fire department, and I've talked to the water department about this, the water department is currently going around and GPSing all the fire hydrants, and then they're going to flow test them when they get done replacing some valves at the water department, at the water plant. I want to make sure that whatever system the fire department is wanting to go to is compatible with the water department, so they can pull up and see where the hydrants are located and get the flow data on those hydrants when they go out. So we went ahead and lifted this in here. It's a software application, but as we go into that, we're going to make sure that whatever they get is compatible with the water department, so they've got that information without having to call anybody else, and so they've got it right there at their fingertips. I did see something like that. A gentleman who I believe is the EMA chief in Livingston showed me that kind of application, and I was very impressed with it. Yes, Mr.
When the dispatch center over here gets a call in, is that going to all the different auxiliaries in the county now? Like the sheriff, the ambulance, the fire department?
That's a question I'll have to defer to either Chief Cawthorn or Sheriff Russell. Mr. Buckmaster, what his question was is, if the dispatch gets a call, does it go out to all the services, or is it just for whatever one needs to respond?
Only the services that need to respond. There are mutual aid agreements or particular documents down there that dictate particular kinds of calls. If there's a head-on collision, rollover collision, or entrapment confirmed in the vehicle, fire will respond to the EMS rescue. EMS requested all structure fire, that's in writing. But if it's a grass fire, generally speaking, EMS doesn't have to come. We can request them. Sheriff's Department will request any additional resources they may need, but it is not automatic for all agencies.
So it's on a case-by-case basis as it comes into dispatch?
Generally, yes.
All right. You did see there is a big drop in here, and it's the fire truck is not in here obviously this year. It dropped. There was $285,000 budgeted this current fiscal year that has already been spent. So we did not replace that. There was the look at basically purchasing a brush truck to replace the current one we have. That would come around $90,000. Given that they had just purchased the fire engine, I made the decision that we will at least propose it to the county commission, the brush truck, if we get a grant that was applied for, and then we'll do the local match and amend the budget at that time. But I did not go ahead and include that $90,000 in the budget. So if we get the grant, we'll come back with a local match, which I think is around 5%, and then do a budget amendment at that time. But as it stands right now, if we don't get the grant, I'm not going to bring the brush truck to the county commission, given that we just got an almost $300,000 piece of equipment this current fiscal year. We did increase other equipment. There was $15,000 in here this year, and that is for some SCBA equipment, which they also applied for a grant for, and they did get, I know at least one grant was $2,500 going to replace 3 SCBA bottles, and that comes from Enbridge, which is a natural gas transfer company. They have a pipeline that goes kind of along the county line to Smith County and Trousdale County. They're trying to, they're giving out grants for emergency preparedness in the communities where they have pipelines, and so we did get I think it's $2,500 roughly, and that's going to purchase 3 replacement SCBA bottles. So the year over year, you will see the fire department, their budget went from $398,240 to $166,610. But the big change is the fire engine is not in there this year. there any further questions on the fire department?
Yeah, how many volunteers are we up to now? Is that the maximum number?
Can't do more. Doesn't have to matter.
I believe the question was how many firefighters you currently have. I think Mr. Buckmaster said you currently have 20. And then I think Mr. Ferguson was the question you asked, what, is there a maximum number? And I think Mr. Buckmaster said currently there's not a maximum number.
Would like to mention that e-dispatch, as we add members, the payers we're currently using are about $650 a piece. We don't have any more. If we added members under our current system, we gotta spend $650 extra. With the e-dispatch, we don't have to because it just dispatches to your cell phone. And it's more reliable than this paper. So for $1,500 a year, we're actually gonna probably save a lot of money.
Okay.
So I'll also take a step back. I just tried to cover those big items in the 101. I will go back and start at the county commission. We did increase. And this will be on page 7 of 72.
Page 7.
Yes, sir, 7 of 72. Count number should be 51100.
Yeah.
Board and committee member fees, the current fiscal year was $36,000. We estimate a current expenditure of $41,966, so we propose to go up to $48,000. Some of that is because when the county officials get an increase, the county commissioners also get an increase because of the, resolution that's passed in 2018 kind of tied it to the county officials. If they get an increase, then the county commissioners get an increase, so that will bring it up. And we propose $48,000 for that amount. And of course, when you increase your base pay, other things go up, other per diem fees went up, Social Security goes up, and employee Medicare goes up. So you'll see an increase there. Other than that, there's no huge change. It went up about $500 for printing stationery and forms. Year over year, it's going from $77,717 to $105,029. Which after this year, if it looks like it's not to those amounts, obviously we can adjust it the next fiscal year, but as we said, we went ahead and increased it just based on what we've seen so far and with the increase in base pay required under the resolution from 2018. Bureau board is going to stay the same. County mayor's office, it will increase. It's $273,241, and this will be on the next page, to $301,076. The majority of that is an increase for the mayor's office, which is statutorily required. So obviously, again, as the base pay goes up, the benefits go up as well. And this will include the 27 pay periods and 2.5% increase for the mayor's staff. So as I said, we're going to go up to $301,076. Another big expenditure, at least budget expenditure, is we went up on our office equipment. This current fiscal year, we budgeted $3,000. Next year, we're proposing $10,000, and that is to replace a server that is basically the heart of the finance accounting software and services that the county uses through local government. It has a lifespan under local government of 7 years, and we will, at the end of this, we'll be rolling into year 8. It has started to turn itself off regularly, so we have to come in and get everybody out of the system and reboot it. So we are if we hit that 7 year going into year 8, we are starting to see that it is starting to fail. And if it goes out, then we have no access to our software. We can't see we can't cycle POs, we can't pay anybody, we can't do anything. So we're going to propose to go ahead and replace that. And Miss Howard's computer is over 5 years old, and the power button is starting to pop off, and it's starting to have some other issues. So we're going to propose to replace her computer as well. But again, these are one-time expenditures; they're not recurring. Yes, sir.
Back up to the clerical personnel, you got $67,709.
And which one is that?
Third line down.
Clerical personnel?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Is that,
That's 2 people.
are they making the same salary?
Two point five increase in the
I mean, they're both making the exact
they're,
same.
no, they're different amounts.
That's what the two total.
I think it should just go down and make it work.
What are you talking about, a million,
Is there any other questions on the mayor's office? The county attorney, we have left that the same, it's $30,100. Going into the election commission, there will be a year-over-year increase. Again, for the election administrator, there is a statutory increase on that. And then there's also some expenditures tied into elections we've got coming up. If you can see postal charges, the current fiscal year is $600. For election results and notifications, they are proposing $3,618. And then other office equipment, they need a digital signature pad, and there will be some other expenditures. And we move into the county courthouse from the Ag Extension Office. So that will increase from $300 this current fiscal year to $1,500. Total, that'd be an increase from $126,951 to $136,576. And a lot of that is tied to the increase for the election administrator and some part-time help for the office, and then obviously the increase in benefits from that as well.
And two elections.
Yes, we have the August election and then the
November.
November election as well.
Some years you don't have any, some you have two.
Next
year's budget.
It's offset, we get revenue every quarter. We get revenue every quarter for the elections commission.
Statutory supplementary salary.
Registered Deeds Office, there's an increase of a little under $4,000. A lot of that is tied to, as she's an elected official, there's a statutory increase, and then a 2.5% for her assistant. That will increase some expenditures there. And she's also asking for $500, which we kept the same for furniture and fixtures, to get some more shelvings for her record books. It's currently, the shelving she has in there right now is starting to fill up. She has a few spaces left, and so she's asking for another shelf or bookcase to store some more of her records, and $325 for a credit card processing machine.
Any questions on registered deeds?
Planning Commission will be a slight increase. It's actually going from $91,931 to $92,049. There will be an increase for Mr. Edwards, and then there's some went down on travel expenditures. The other contracted services, that's for the Greater Nashville Regional Council. They serve as a consultant on zoning and other matters. That did go up a little bit from $11,620 to $11,800, and that's based on population and some other numbers that GNRC uses to come up with their dues for that service. It did decrease gasoline from $1,500 to $1,000. Increased staff development, $800 was from $2,200 to $3,000, and that's also to include Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals training.
Which is now mandated by the state. The state.
Ms. Wall, Mayor.
Yes,
You got Sam at 6 certification, how many more has he got to get?
he has all 6.
It's good to go then.
Yes, sir.
Good deal.
Mr. Ferguson?
I had attended some meetings earlier this year where there was some discussion from the citizen group that was at the meeting. And there was some talk about getting him an assistant at some point.
Did you have anybody in the community talk to you about anything, the citizen, I'm talking about the citizens?
I had some people mention it, I had Mr. Edwards mention it, and I said no.
Okay. Because I wanted to know if those citizens ever came to you, because they were at that
Well,
meeting.
it was also mentioned at a board of, say, a building committee meeting, and I think another one that he had an assistant and made no use of them, and so I heard from numerous commissioners that were leery about giving them an assistant at the time. Given that when we went through this budget, everybody was telling me we're gonna have a housing market crash and new housing constructions are gonna plummet and this kind of stuff based on that and decrease in revenues. He asked for it, I told him he could come here tonight to make his case to put that back in the budget. He's decided that he's gonna go with my request, and so I took that out of the budget.
Yeah, I just want to know if the citizens ever made it to your office.
The only one I heard about is when I went to those meetings myself, and they didn't really mention an assistant, they just talked about increased codes enforcement, which he has done. There's actually been a couple of houses over the last couple of weeks that he has condemned based on complaints that come into his office.
Yeah. Makes sense. Okay.
Now, if we get further into the year and we see maybe an increase, I do know we have some projects coming up that's gonna go in front of the planning commission. If the circumstances look like it may require it going forward, if we don't see that housing crash, then maybe we can come back and revisit and do a budget amendment if the commission decides to, but at this point, I said no.
I just want to know if they came to your office.
No.
Okay.
We did talk to all the major contractors in the area to see if they felt like this was going to impact them and their building and the rate of building. All of them, much to my surprise, indicated that they don't think this is going to have a great impact on them unless it's a high unemployment for a long period of time and people can't get raises. So all of them are going right now full speed ahead, selling as fast as they build them. So we didn't feel like we needed to drastically reduce the revenue side of that, and did spend a lot of time trying to make sure that we didn't. But this whole budget right now, folks, is as fluid as it's ever been because of the situation that we're all in, and I just think we all need to realize that.
I believe, if I didn't do this, you all can please let me know. I think I included a link to a YouTube video that was done at the University of Tennessee. The first half hour was a doctor at the University of Tennessee, but he works in Memphis, and the second half was an economist. And the economist said we're going to see some months of over 30% unemployment, and he called it Great Depression too. So at that time, looking at what he was saying based on what we heard from other economists, we tried to limit the expenditures as much as we could, under the understanding that if we get further into the year and we do have some things that pop up and our revenue numbers are increased, as you said, the comptroller's office has made it clear numerous times that we can do a budget amendment if circumstances change. But at that time, based on what we were hearing for the economics, they were pretty much saying over 30% in unemployment for 2 months. At the end of the year, you're still going to be in double digits. You will not be back to current employment till the middle or end of 2022. Yes, Mr.
Comment. Number one, the way Nashville's raising their taxes in Davidson County is growth ain't gonna stop. It's gonna come this way. It's gonna continue to do that. Another comment, what about the lettering system? Hadn't heard any comments on that in some time now. Is Mr. Sam, is he still the one that's kind of policing that?
You mean the addresses?
Addresses, yeah.
Well, we've heard a lot of that in the last few days. Yes, under the ordinance that was passed, he is the enforcement officer. And I've gotten some calls, and I referred those to Mr. Edwards' office to straighten those out. But yes, under the ordinance, he is the enforcement officer.
Who's got down here $1,000 for Christmas down? What's that? Who you go to?
That goes to the planning commission and BZA. I believe at the time they had done that, they were not getting paid. I believe that changed in 2018, but that was in the budget, so we left it there. If you want to take it out, that's up to you, but it's for a Christmas dinner that is done by the planning commission and board of zoning appeals, and they normally have it at the senior citizen center and pay them rent to rent the space.
But they're getting paid just like everybody else on the committee now.
Yes, sir.
I served on the planning commission for probably 15 years, and there was no pay, so the only thing we got was a Christmas dinner. And And since we went back to paying it, I'm not sure we're obligated to give them dinner anymore. I'm not sure we should. That's taxpayer money we're giving away. And you're getting paid to start with.
Well, as everything else, this is a proposal that I'm required to give. If you want to make changes to it, you're empowered to do that. So if you want to take it out, it's your authority to do so.
I don't think we should be paying any entities dinner. Firemen, planning commission, none of them. We don't do the sheriff's department, we don't do the school board. We shouldn't be doing that. It's just, I've been hammered time to do because of it. And I just told us this because of the way it's been done in the past. But that don't mean it should be done that way in the future.
That always make it right.
No, ethically it ain't right. And you're picking out a couple of groups and patting them on the back when we're getting paid like everybody else is. I don't think we should do it.
Need a motion to take that?
Sure. I'll be glad to take the motion.
I make a motion to move the Christmas dinner tonight.
And a second, and a motion from Mr. Terry, a second from Mr. Ford to strike that line item for the Christmas dinner, in lieu of them being paid.
And as far as, we had discussion on that for a second.
Sure.
This one is actually pinpointed to what it's going towards. Are there any other departments that are receiving meals as part of the compensation that maybe is mixed into another line item? So where I'm going with that is, if you're gonna do it in one department, but another department has something very similar, but it's not where you can see it, we ought to cover all the bases with everybody, not be picking on just one department.
The fire department does get meals, but it's not in the 101, it's in the 111.
Okay.
But yes, that, as far as, to my knowledge, that is the only other one that's doing that. Now, you may have, under the travel, we cover meals for people going to conferences and whatnot, but as far as dinners, in the vein of this expenditure, the only other one I know is the fire department. If there's another one, I'm either forgetting it or I don't know about it.
Your per diems make sense, because you're out traveling, you have no choice, but have a way around.
So the road department does a Christmas dinner. I don't know whether it's paid out of the road budget or the road superintendent pays for it. I'm not sure how they pay for it, but I know they do. They're the only other one, I think the sheriff's department does one. How it's paid for, I don't know how it's paid for.
So that's kind of not point, it's looks like we're picking on a department because they have it itemized to see it, whereas others may be blended in there under another category. So I don't want to pick on one, and not be across the board and be consistent with all of them.
Having been over this department for 8 years, if you'll let me speak to this a little bit. Number one, they did not ask to be paid. They had never been paid. They never asked to be paid. We were trying to get everybody on basically an even keel. With some are not being paid, some are being paid one amount, another amount. We were trying to get it all even and make it fair. The only year that would have been last year, the one we're in now, and just coming up that it would have been that way. Now I do know, I'm pretty sure, that there are several of the members that have not taken their pay. I'm pretty sure of that because they didn't feel like they should be paid and get Christmas dinner. So how many, I can't speak to that. I'm perfectly fine with taking it away. I think they would be as well. I hate to speak for them, but I just don't see that this is going to make the planning commission all good. It's kind of a thing to put it together, trying to get a head count, and so many times they say they're coming and they don't, and it's never been $1,000. It's always wound up being closer to $700 or $800. There's usually money left over. I think if you look at it from this year, it's $828. But still, I think that we find that it's being removed. So we did have a motion and a second, Mr. Ford.
I'd like to move the motion to incorporate any other entity that's getting paid through county money right there. If you don't do one, you need to do them all. You can't just do the one and pick on that group. I'm talking about any of them. Now, I don't care who has their parties, but let them pay for it, let the taxpayers.
I think that needs to be brought up in each independent department's budget. I mean, what we're looking at is this line item. That's what the motion was. Well, we just need to watch for it. We can go back to it. Yeah. But yours was the second, his was the motion.
I did see.
Okay. But unless Gary wants to amend his motion.
If we find it in a row, we take it out of the picture.
Everybody understand? Okay. Ms. Parker?
Question for you, are the only two that we know of, Mayor? You said earlier the fire department and then this one, is that the only two we're aware of?
I think Mr. Jewell mentioned the highway department. I think that's rolled into another one. I couldn't point out to you where it's at in their budget. And then the sheriff's department, I wasn't aware of that one, but he mentioned the sheriff's department, I believe. That's the only ones that I know about.
Can we identify how often this happens? Because it sounds like on the planning commission, that was just once a year.
The planning commission is once a year. The fire department, I believe, is once a month. And the highway department, I believe they do a dinner that I don't know they pay for with highway funds. I think they do one dinner at Thanksgiving and another one around Christmas. Now, the Christmas one, I do know there's a Region 3 meeting that's tied into there that is not paid for by the highway department, but I think they do a separate one for the highway department. And again, I don't know that the highway department funds are used for that. I just know they have a party for it.
Okay, so there's a couple we might need to research a little more. One's every month and one's once a year, so.
I would have to ask Mr. Scruggs where that would be in his budget, how much that is, if it is paid for by the highway department.
Being that we've already covered the fire department, some of their budgetary items. What line item is that under?
It's in the 111 fund, it's in the urban services, not the
Oh,
111.
it's in the urban services?
Yes, sir.
That's what I was saying earlier. We had
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
I do have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other discussion? Let's go.
One more, you said 1 month with the sheriff's department, is there any training going on in any of those? Or any kind of place?
The fire department, it's rolled into training.
Just another question on my list.
The highway department is not, usually when you get down to the Thanksgiving meal, that's where the summer crew, the seasonal crew is being laid off, and so that's kind of rolled into a layoff. Here's what's going on, and then they come back in Christmas and kind of have a little party for them. It's my understanding. Now, whether that's paid for by Mr. Scruggs or the highway department, I couldn't tell you. I'd have to ask Mr. Scruggs.
One last thing. At this moment, I'd like to ask Commissioner Clarity to maybe rescind that until we find out more information about all of them. You can do it on one, and then we don't know the details on the rest. Does that make sense? Or, I'd rather find out about and just vote on it all at once, and just to have it isolated. Does that make, maybe I'm wrong on that, but.
Well, we have 2 more meetings, on Thursday night, on Monday night.
Okay.
Get the answer between now and then, and we do this one every week.
I just don't want to seem like I'm picking on you.
I agree with you, we need all these people out there. We got 2 more weeks to go through.
Yes.
We do have a motion and a second. I'd like to go ahead and vote on that motion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. And if it is, Mayor, if you would take that one out. All right. Moving right on.
Next one will be the county buildings. Should be on page 12 of 72. This amount did go up year over year. It went from $227,368 to $279,267. That's almost a little over $50,000 increase. Over $30,000 of that was there was an employee moved from the urban services at the request of the Urban Services Council. It's a maintenance personnel. And that was the base pay is $27,670, and then you also got the increase in Social Security, retirement, medical insurance, and everything that comes along with that for the benefits. Aside from that, there was an increase with other contracted services. $9,300, but that's because there's some other services now rolled into that line item that weren't there before. A lot of other stuff stayed the same, the electricity stayed the same, natural gas stayed the same. Water and sewer, we did go up $3,000 because currently we're estimating we're going to spend $6,000 in water and sewer. We went up $3,000 on other charges, and that's because we're upgrading the lighting in the buildings, going to LED lighting. We've had some lighting that has failed over time as we've gone in. We're trying to replace them as we go along, and it's a lot cheaper nowadays. The LED fixtures and everything are just about the same price as going back with the traditional bulbs, so we're going to go ahead and switch those over to LED, which we hope to see savings in electricity as we go forward. And next time you're in the mayor's office, it's going to look a lot brighter, and that's because we went through LED bulbs when you went in, because the mayor's office, it was like watching hopscotch. The lights would start flickering off and on and not come on, so they went ahead and replaced it with LED lighting, and it is very bright. Site development, we increased from 1,000 to 5,000. There were some other improvements that goes along with this to the outsides of the buildings. It's been neglected over time. This may or may not be done, but we went ahead and put it in the budget just in case. And then other items stayed the same, but there was year-over-year increase, and like I said, the majority of that was moving that personnel from the Urban Services Fund over to the General Services Fund. Yes, Ms. Jones?
One big change in the other contractor services that had place cleaning and best water and shredder.
It now includes the water supply, the water coolers in the building, and also the shredded services, which would come in and shred the confidential records. Those were not included on that line item before, they are now.
The cleaning company, is that the same one that you?
It's the same one. Their rate has not changed. It stayed the same. It's just moving over other services, and I believe they moved from other line items into this one, so it looks like an increase, but it's just because they were moved into this line item where they weren't there last year.
Before that cleaning services was a person's salary, but it just moved down into that category.
Right, and going with the contracted services we are doing, we had one custodian before, whereas this cleaning service, we have 2 personnel, and it's actually about $780 cheaper when you factor in the labor cost and the benefits and everything. We actually saved about $780 and got 2 people for less than the price of one.
Well, that's what I was saying, that's why I was asking about the big change in the
And that's because they rolled in the water cooler service and the shredded service for the confidential records, which we have to have. They just rolled into this line item, whereas they weren't there before.
It wasn't the water cooler?
It was, it just is in a different line item, so now it's rolled into this one, so it makes that line item look like it's jumped up, but it's, I imagine, and Ms. Thomas can correct me here, I do imagine the service fees have gone up, but it was just as far as put in a different line item, and now it's rolled into that one.
The majority of it is the shredded has gone up.
What about the maintenance personnel that's moved from Urban Services? Is that in 101 now?
Yes, sir, it's right here in the County Buildings Fund. It would be the 167 object code, the line item says maintenance personnel. You can see it's blank in the actual and then the current fiscal year, and then it says proposed is 27,670. That's moving that personnel from the Urban Services into this function here under the General Services at the request of the Urban Services Council.
That person's not in Urban Services, no more is in.
Right, they were no longer being paid out of the Urban Services. They were paid, and their benefits are done 100% out of the General Services.
They're working on all the county buildings, not just urban services buildings, so it felt like it needed to be categorized into the county buildings and not be funded out of just the city.
Is there a reason why we don't shred our own, why we contract it out?
Well, they take and dispose of it in a more secured manner than what we could do. And it's not just in the mayor's office, they also go over in the archives or records that have people's confidential information, and it is shredded, put in a locked container, and then they come and pick it up and take it and dispose of it so that it can't be taken back together or anything. It's a much more secure system than what we could do.
Any other questions on county building? Mayor?
Next, preservation of records, you have to see year over year, that comes down. It was 4,365, and that was, they were getting a grant to get some new Mac cabinets, which they have gotten. And so it's going to come down to $1,200. Property assessor's office is going to go up. A lot of that is tied to, again, the statutory increase for the elected official and the 2.5% increase along with the 27 pay periods, which increases their pay and benefits. There was an increase in the line item. You see other contracted services. It was $4,500 this current fiscal year. It's going to go up to $6,000. Next, we're proposing $6,000 the next fiscal year. That is for it's called Tax Management Associates. That is kind of like an auditing firm that will come in and audit the records and make sure that the assessments are done correctly. That is, I believe that's required. And he's also asked for $3,000 for a GIS tech support to work with the state GIS system. And so the year over year, you're going to see an increase from $137,378 up to $143,802. But the majority of that increase is tied to pay and benefit increases. Yes, sir.
Let's get down here, $1,500 for board of equalization. Is that the members?
Yes, sir, that's the Board of Equalization members.
Does that come out of his payroll or the county payroll?
Comes out of that line.
Well, it's out of that line item.
He decides how much they get paid.
They're not going to pay like the board members?
No, they get paid a lot more, but they work a lot. They're there like 6 hours, 8 hours at a time. Right, for 3 days.
Yeah, there's also yearly training requirements they have to go through.
But theirs is simply not just a 1 hour meeting. Typically, it's at least 6 hours every night for 3 days. I believe they pay $150 a night, $75. It's like $150 if they meet 2 nights. Sometimes they meet 3 if they have a big. There's 5 nights. Yeah, depending on how many people come in requesting equalization on the tax. They never know how busy they're going to be. A lot of times they're sitting there staring at each other. Other times they've got people lined up out the door. So it's just hard to know. I've served on that board before, served on that board.
Next one will be the County Trustees Office. This is on page 14 of 72. Again, the same thing. There's a statutory increase to the trustee, 2.5% increase along with the 27 pay periods for their deputy, which increases their benefits as well, so Social Security, state retirement, Medicare. Data processing, that fee had gone up. A lot of the service providers are raising their fees. Office supplies is actually going to go down. It was like this current fiscal year is $2,200. We're going to go down to $1,500. Office equipment is going to go up from $500 to $4,500, and that is because they have 2 computers that have reached the end of the useful life recommended by the software support and hardware company they go through, which is local government. That's the same one I mentioned earlier that the server is with. They recommend replacing the computers at 5 years, and we are currently in year 5, so they're requesting to replace their computers. That also comes with tech support. If their computer fails during this 5-year period, they'll come in and replace it, and it's pretty quickly. That way they're not down without that computer able to process funds coming in for an extended period of time. That will increase the trustee's office in this current fiscal year was $137,000. $38 to $146,027. And I will point out that at the estimated fiscal year, we're looking to only spend $133,162. So a lot of these things we are trying to overestimate. That way at the end of the year, we're not having to come in and do a lot of budget amendments to try to fix funds that we could have done on the front end.
Any questions on county trustee?
County clerk's office went up, is going to go up a little under $2,000. That is almost exclusively tied to the statutory increase for the trustee and then the 2.5% increase in the 27 pay periods, which will increase not only the pay but the benefits that go along with it. There was a decrease in office equipment from $3,550 to $500 this year. So year over year, like I said, it's a little under $2,000 proposed. And their actuals, what we expect their actual spend is going to be this year is $131,658. But the office equipment was to buy, I believe, some computers and other items in the the clerk's office. Are there any questions of the clerk's office? The next item is data processing. Year over year, we are proposing a decrease in that one. We budgeted $80,614 this current fiscal year. We're proposing $73,150 in the 2021 fiscal year. A lot of that is for the backup for our communications equipment. We had an issue earlier in the year where we had a power failure, and when the equipment goes off at the administration building, the entire county loses its internet service and phone service except for those that are tied into AT&T. So this was to buy backup power equipment, so in case it would, what's called the knock room at the administration building, which has the servers and everything for the internet and telephone system, they will have a 2-hour backup for someone to get the generator running instead of what we had last time, which is when it failed to start, the sheriff's department lost their internet and those services. But that was a one-time fee or one-time expenditure for the current fiscal year. It will not be there this next fiscal year, so that's why you see the decrease year over year. With no questions, I'll move on to the next one. Should be page 16 of 42, Administration of Justice. This will be the Circuit Court Clerk's Office. Increase of $8,200, a little under $8,000. Going from $200,800 to $208,203. Again, a lot of that increase is the elected officials' statutory increase, the 2.5% for the deputy, and then the 27 pay periods, which also increased benefits as we go forward. A lot of the other line items stayed almost exactly the same. If there are no questions, I'll move on to the General Sessions Court. This increase is entirely the statutory increase for Judge Linville. It's 1.8% increase, and that is dictated by the Administrative Office of the Court, so it's done a little bit differently. But that entire increase is tied to the 1.8% increase for Judge Linville and then the accompanying increase in benefits. And it'll go from current fiscal year $98,399 to we're proposing $99,919, so it went up a little bit. No questions, we'll move on to the Chancery Court. Increase from $128,312 to $133,455. Again, same thing, this is an elected official office, so there was a statutory increase, the 2.5% proposed increase, and then the 27 pay periods, which increased the deputy's pay along with the benefits that go along with it. There was an increase for legal notices, recording of court costs, and an increase for printing and stationery forms. A lot of that is tied to the increase in postage rates. Mileage went down $50. A lot of the other items stayed the same. The premiums for surety bonds, we were removing that from this proposed budget, and then the in-service staff development, we've cut that $300 from $400 down to $100. But any questions, I'll move on. The judicial commissioners, this one we're decreasing year over year. The reason for the decrease is in the current fiscal year, there was a line item for office equipment that was going to be laptop and some other equipment to allow the judicial commissioners to basically remotely do arraignments and remotely do probable cause determinations for people arrested without a warrant and other items. That was not done. There's some legal issues about how that would have to be done. A lot of equipment could be used in those items. And so we took that out this year. I don't think we have really gotten an answer on that to satisfaction. One group says it's not their responsibility. Talk to another group and they say the same thing. And so we're really getting put back and forth and not getting concrete answers. So we removed that from this fiscal year's budget, and that is the reason for the year-over-year decrease.
Does this have any increase in what Mr. Brown, Mr. Puckett are being paid?
Yes, I believe that it goes up a little bit. You can see the increase for Social Security and Medicare has gone up slightly.
Was that like the 2.5% that we're giving all employees? So they did that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So why are we paying different on the cell phone?
Mr. Brown is not, he did not get a cell phone through the county. He's using his personal phone, and the county commission last year, the year before, voted to do a kind of a supplement for his bill, and they set it at a certain percentage, and it comes out to $25 a month. Mr. Puckett is the primary. Mr. Brown comes in if he's on vacation or unavailable, so he's, as far as percentage-wise, he's about 25% of the time. The work is done by Mr. Brown versus 75% of the time for Mr. Puckett, since he's the primary judicial commissioner. And I think that's how they came to the percentage of what the pay was going to be, and that's how it came down to $25 a month.
I talked to you about that last year, and he told me exactly what you said.
Right. I think at that time, he had not requested it, it's just the county commission.
At that time, we wouldn't get nothing.
Right. There had been an issue, it had come up about use of cell phones, and I brought it up because I requested a cell phone because I didn't want mine to be subject to a discovery through a lawsuit or something if that were to happen. And I think at the time, one of the commissioners, it may have been Mr. Ford, I don't remember, made a motion to go ahead and do some supplement to Commissioner Brown for use of his personal cell phone.
Wouldn't it come under the same thing if something happened? Would it be summons?
It would, but that's his choice.
He made that decision.
And he made that decision, we didn't make it.
I think he was offered a county cell phone and declined.
There was a lot of county cell phones several years ago. And we had a new mayor that took everybody's cell phone away. 3 mayors ago, I won't call any names. And I used my personal cell phone for 8 years and never got anything back for using my personal cell phone. It was a very unfair policy, and we tried to address that a year or two ago, and that's part of that deal where we were trying to bring that into line.
If there are no other questions, I'll move on. Courtroom security. This is one year over year, there is a decrease, and the main reason for the decrease is there was $20,000 allocated this fiscal year to put security cameras throughout the courtrooms and the Justice Center. This next year, all those cameras are in place except for some in the courtrooms, and the sheriff estimates that'll be probably less than 1,000, so we're going ahead and budget $1,000. So year over year, you're seeing a decrease from 147,949 to 135,883. And there's still the same thing, these people are getting the 2.5% increase in the 27 pay periods, which would increase their pay and the benefits. Yes, Mr. Ford?
I thought the main purpose if we finish that building on us, kind of so it could be more secure. They was complaining about this one not being secure. It's went up quite a bit to secure it over there.
I'll be blunt with you. There was a lot of things that should have been done in the beginning on that building that weren't done. I was here, I went over it with judges, I went over it with court staff, and I could have told you from the beginning, there's things that are not in there that should be there.
We had 2 doors here, I don't know what to get over there.
Well, there's still no audio, there's the only audio equipment in there is the court reporters to take it. There is no sound system for witnesses testifying, attorneys. There is no video presentation equipment. I mean, they're rolling in now, but it was not in there as it is in other courtrooms. There were some things that were not included up front that should have been included. And these security cameras are one of them. If you go to Macon County, they record everything, and it came in handy one time because they had a defendant who tried to jump the judge on the bench, and then that footage was used to prosecute that gentleman. But this is just to put cameras inside the courtrooms themselves. It's not going anywhere else in the Justice Center. It's just in the courtrooms, and that's for that reason, because there's none in there currently. But that is standard procedure in any courtroom you go to. You go to any county around us, and you walk inside the courtroom, you can see the little black balls on the ceiling.
Is there any kind of fee on the camera or?
I think it's just a one-time expense, and then they'll be tied to a central system which will digitally keep track of the footage, and I think it stays for maybe 30 days, or if they need to store it longer, they have the equipment at the Sheriff's Department, they'll transfer it into that and store it longer.
So there's no monitoring fee or nothing like that?
Not to my knowledge, it's just for the camera equipment itself. Everything else will be fed into the existing system for digital storage.
They need those you need those security cameras in there. Period. You never know what's going to happen.
The sheriff did come before the law enforcement committee on this, and we did look at it and voted to do it. We have covered this.
I think he originally, it was a few $1,000s higher than going through the budget process with it. And he looked at it and said, got some new estimates and you can come down to 1,000, so we did that. I will just briefly hit the Sheriff's Department because he's going to cover that on Thursday.
Yeah.
If you just look at it year over year, there is an increase. There was some personnel that moved from the 111 fund over to the 101, so that increases some of it. And then you've got, again, the 2.5% increase, the statutory increase for the sheriff as he's an elected official, and then the 27 pay periods, along with the longevity increases that were put in place in, I believe, 2017-18 or 18-19 fiscal year. And then this is the fund that has the bulletproof vest at $60,650, and some expenditures for school resource officer and then the patrol vehicles. He's been doing every year to replace his current fleet to try to get him as up to date as possible. If it's all right with the commissioners, I'll leave it to the sheriff to answer any in-depth questions on that, as he will be here Thursday.
Let's go ahead and jump over the rescue squad, page 24.
Okay. There was a year-over-year decrease going from $67,530 to $72,080. There was a big drop in, if you see other equipment this current fiscal year, about $19,450. We're proposing next year to be $15,000. Again, there's $3,000 in there for communications equipment. That is to replace radios and batteries, and that is to move to the new digital radio for the new communication system. Excuse me.
Excuse me, Mayor. Up on line, I believe it's 316. We have a footnote that says Christmas meal.
Yes, sir, we do contributions, 316. You'll see Christmas meal donations, that's $600.
It's actually what we were talking about before.
What percentage of that, a part of that is Christmas meal versus donations, I don't know. I can get that information under the request that was given earlier.
Probably should be coming through the county, flow through things.
Sure. I think we probably have it by Thursday.
We'll look at that later. We'll got a question about that, we'll get an answer on it. Anything else in that, in the rescue squad budget?
Well, other things stayed the same. As I said, year over year, there's a little bit less than $4,000 decrease.
We got $15,000 other equipment.
That's things they buy throughout the year. If you get equipment damaged while responding to a call, they replace it. It's just things that pop up through the year that they got to replace, or ages or something like that. So it's not tied to one specific item. It's just replacing equipment as they go throughout the year. As you can see, this year we're estimating they're spending $19,450, and some of that was to purchase a new vehicle extrication equipment that's battery powered versus pneumatic.
Well, I got a question that's not pertaining to this. You coming up with 27 pay periods.
Yes, sir.
What's that costing this year versus what it cost last year?
It's not in there. It's only that it happens every 11 years. It's just a quirk of the calendar. You have something that builds up over time, and at the end of the 11th year, all of a sudden you have a new date in your calendar that you got to put in there to make your calendar meet the rotation of the sun and all that stuff.
They're not getting an extra pay, it's just that there's that many pay periods in this fiscal.
It just, one more day is added to the year, so you actually have to extend over to a new pay period.
They are,
That's what I'm saying.
but they're not getting a free paycheck that they didn't work for.
Yeah, but how much is that amount to that extra pay check?
Take whatever that amount is and divide by 27, and you'll know exactly how much it is for that part.
Countywide.
Pardon?
Countywide, all county.
How much is the total pay period?
$100,000.
Yeah, well over 100.
So we're having $100,000 more pay period this year than that last.
Yeah. Or next year. Or the year.
It only happens once every 11 years.
So I'm trying to look at, if you're getting $100,000 more this year, it's gonna drop $800,000 next year.
Yeah.
Yes. Like I said, it only occurs once every 11 years. So it's it'll be, the way it falls, it'll be in the next fiscal year, but you won't see it again for 11 years.
Yeah, but you'll have that extra $100,000.
No, it'll come out.
No, it'll back.
The 2.5% increase is not tied to the 27 pay periods. They're actually two separate things. The 27 pay periods is just a quirk of the calendar, and it falls in this year because it's been 11 years since it occurred. It'll fall off next year, so you'll see some of these labor costs actually go down because they're going back to 26 pay period instead of 27.
That's what I'm getting at. You'll have that extra $100,000 back in the budget.
Yeah, the next year you're going to see a decrease in these labor costs because when you go into the 2021-22 budget, that 27th pay period is not going to be there.
You're not going to 25, you're not going to be 26, 26, 26, 27, 25. You're 26, 26, 27, 26, 26, 27. But that, but yes, it's going, you're going to have that 100,000 more in payroll total plus some change this year that you won't have next year.
That's right.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, it's not it's going to be a 1-year thing, and then it won't happen again for another 11 years.
Unless you, I'll be dead, you'll be dead, you'll be dead. Bill will be here. Bill will be here. No, you won't be dead. You'll be right. But yeah. And that's what we were trying to say in the beginning. You're going to see some inflated figures on salaries. They're going to look a really big jump because we've got an extra pay period plus the raises on top. But next year, that will adjust back. Okay. Clear as mud? All right. Did we get through with the rescue squad?
Yes, sir. I'll move on to emergency management. You see there's a year-over-year decrease, a little less than $8,000, going from $109,700 to $101,442. That's tied to mainly two items coming off on emergency management performance. That's a grant that was $5,000, and then a Homeland Security grant. Those were budget amendments throughout the year, so they're not included at the beginning of this next fiscal year, so you take those out and it reduces your expenditures down to $101,442. But keep in mind, those were also revenue neutral because they were grants that came in, so it's just allocated when they came in.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Part-time, Mark Farmers, how many hours does he work, is he required to work something, is that salary back?
If you hit 30 hours under the ACA, you're now considered full-time. So it'd be 29 or less.
But I mean, it's salary back, I know that full-time people is working, he's what they can also.
Is it, 20,330? I think he's scheduled for 24 hours. 24 hours. This is one of those that if there are grants that come in, we will be adding them in and taking them out. So, you know, this is one of the departments that we're likely to have some grant money, and we'll have to have some budget amendments going forward.
Usually throughout the year, there's either state, federal grants that come in or companies that are doing grants or other nonprofits that do grants, and we try to put in for them all that we can, and you get different amounts throughout the year. If there's no further questions, I'll move on. Inspection and regulation, that stayed the same at $1,500. Coroner and medical examiner, we went down on that. We're at $40,200. That was based on that we had 2 months there where we saw 4 or 5 people a month having to be autopsied for various reasons. We're not seeing that trend this year, so we've decreased that down to $22,500. But there is going to be an increase in the fees to do the autopsies. It's going up $100 up to $1,825. Yes, sir.
We'll have less than the cost us more.
We're budgeting less, but it's going to cost us more per person, but we are also getting reimbursed for Core Civic for any autopsy that has been done for somebody who passes away out of prison.
You get straight from Courtroom Security on that, and they finally catch up.
Yes, sir, they went back to a certain date and reimbursed us for everybody going forward. Now when we have one come in, and we see that when we know it's somebody from Core Civic, we send them that invoice and they've been reimbursing us for that.
Any other questions on those?
The next item says local health center. That is the health department. That is actually run by the state of Tennessee, and we help pay some of the expenses. They've submitted the same amount year over year for at least a decade, so they've kept it that same amount. The Board of Health met last month, approved the same amount as this current fiscal year. As you can see, we're only estimating they're going to spend $23,859, but every year they request $32,589, but I don't think we've seen anywhere where they've spent that amount of money, so they've just kept it the same for, like I said, at least a decade. Animal shelter, there is going to be an increase. This is tied to increase in the salaries given, the 2.5% increase in the 27 pay periods, and increase in benefits. We are having to make repairs to the building, improvements to the building. That's going to go up $2,000. We're looking at doing some roof repairs. Currently there is space where some birds can fly into the shelter, so we're going to repair that. And we've also been done other repairs as they go along. They now have a restroom and laundry facilities inside the building. There have been improvements into the animal containment area, and we're looking to do some more improvements on the outside just to kind of improve the building as we go along. As you see, we increased the electricity given that there now is a laundry room added, and then increase in water and sewer because they now have a restroom and laundry facilities. And other supplies and material, we went up $500 on that just to give us a little bit of cushion of various things that have come in throughout the year that need to be purchased or replaced. And then the site development, we left that the same. That's to improve the outdoor area, to install some kennels. Right now, they just had some hastily erected fences out there. This is actually new, proper outdoor kennels. So with those expenditures going up and the increase in labor cost, they're going to go up from $61,140 to $67,051. But some of these increases are offset by donations that come into the animal shelter, whether it's in memoriam or people donating just throughout the year because they're animal lovers and they want to help the shelter. And those funds that are donated do go into a reserve account and they can only be used for the animal shelter. Alcohol and drug programs, this is done under the control of the sheriff. It just leaves it the same. This is the account where they can send offenders for drug treatment if it's arranged between the defendant's attorney and the judge agrees with it. Other local health services, these are various things done through grant, the tobacco grant, which will be ending after this current fiscal year. They've spent the amount of funds that was there, and that's why you see a decrease to nothing. Because that grant money has been spent, so we have no more expenditures for that item. And I believe that was tobacco settlement money from the lawsuits, I don't know, at the end of the 90s, early 2000s. Sanitation Education Litter Program, this is done through the litter grant through the Tennessee Department of Transportation. So you get a set amount. We budgeted $44,200, and that's kind of the set amount. That's what the grant is, and that's what their expenditures will be. So there's no change in that amount. Other public welfare and health, this is contributions to nonprofits and other organizations. This goes to the HATS, which works with disabled people to give them a job. Mid-Cumberland Human Resources, which works and does our local public transportation, Meals on Wheels, congregate meals. They serve as ombudsman for senior citizens and other services throughout the county and the region. And then the Health Center came before the Budget and Finance Committee and requested some help this year, and so we put in $2,000 for the Health Center. So that'll be a year-over-year increase of that $2,000 amount, so the public health and welfare will go from $9,500 to $11,500. Yes, that's when they came in asking for the refrigerators and then the shelving. I think Brian King said he had shelving he was going to give them, and so this should be some of the items they were asking for.
You may be in a position to answer this. Are we seeing very many people in our county hungry?
The last time I spoke to the director, Ms. Flatt, she said I believe they have around 500 something people they help through varying things. Some of it were with clothing, some of them with food. I believe for the ones that are really the low income that are helping with food, I believe it's around 140 a month. And they've seen an increase over the last year or so.
The answer is the question is, and I know in the school, Dr. said about 350 meals a day right now.
It's better than that. We're probably 370.
370 meals a day for these kids. So, yeah, there is still a great need. And with the situation with jobs, it's probably going to be even more. But that's what they had requested. So that's
How long y'all going to continue to be?
We have staff, they're budgeted through May the 20th. So, they're still on the payroll, so we're able to do that. Obviously, the summer months do present a concern. There is a summer feeding program that we have done with the Books and Pipes Plus.
Yes, that's my stuff.
And whether we will apply for that, but to what level we can serve, I don't know if we can service 400 people a day. But we probably got in the neighborhood of 20 employees feeding close to 400 a day.
Do you think we're going to do the books? You think we're going to do the books about this?
No, we wouldn't do that this summer because of the social distancing. I know that bus is like a can,
Yeah.
so we wouldn't do that right now, but we would really want to try to feed as many children as we could.
So you're not really busting at all right now?
We're just, right now, under these present health conditions, we don't think that would be the right thing to do.
Okay. We're over our time. We were going to stay till 8 o'clock. I've got 8:03. I would wish, I had hoped that we could get through the county general. We took a little bit longer than I anticipated with the first business that we disposed of. Mayor, looking at this, you think 15, 20 more minutes would pretty much wrap it
I
up?
believe so. A lot of the items remaining are, I mean, there's like one explanation for the things going up, and it's usually tied to, like I said, one item.
Is everybody good with pushing on another few minutes, or if y'all are ready to go? I'd like for us to get through this. I think it'll make it easier tonight to come if we go ahead. So I would say anybody that needs to leave, you can be excused. If not, we're gonna push on for about 15 more minutes.
Okay. The next item would be for senior citizens assistance. This is the expenses tied to the senior citizen center. The increase there is less than $1,000, going from $43,570 to $44,801, and that is exclusively to the 2.5% increase in 27 pay periods for the supervisor director would be Ms. Hunter, and the increase in benefits. So if it's all right with everyone, I'm going to kind of run through it so we can get out a little bit quicker. Libraries, again, there's an increase. It's tied to the increase of pay and benefits. Not a huge increase anywhere else. It's mainly keeping things the same. It's just pretty much salary and benefits. Parks and Fair Boards, again, same thing. There's actually a decrease year over year. It went from $170,595 to $152,576. There is an increase for pay for people in that. However, Mr. Salih, part of his pay comes with this, not his complete pay, so it's not as heavily impacted on this particular function. You can see there's a $20,000 line item in there for engineering services. This was for the built environment grant, so that was revenue neutral. That was a grant coming from the state and going to that expenditure. So that's why you see such a dramatic year-over-year decrease, that the revenue neutral grant and expenditure is no longer in there. UT Ag Extension Service. UT has decided to add another agent to their rural offices. That's what's mainly for the increase in this one. That'll be an increase of roughly, I think, $14,000. The county is paying part of that person's compensation, and the University of Tennessee is paying the rest. This was something that we could have opted out of. However, in speaking with Mr. Evans, the benefit to the community, he thinks, of other programs they would be able to do through the UT Ag Extension Service. He said they used to be involved in economic development efforts. He thinks they'd be able, once they get a new staff in there, to divvy up the responsibilities and try to increase their participation in that. So based on that and the fact that this is going to be done sooner or later, I went ahead and put it in there. This is before the coronavirus, but given the benefits he expressed to me, to the children and the certain programs they run through the UT Extended Service, I think it's a good expenditure. So we've left it in the budget.
It may not happen, but right now it's still there. But I'm saying UT may not have the funding to do it, but right now they do.
We included it on the county side, but the state side was still, outside our control. But he asked me if we could go ahead and include it for the county side in case they did get the funding. And given, like I said, the benefits he expressed to me, I went ahead and included it in there. And that's why you see that's the big cost driver of the increase from $50,554 to $67,375. Once you include the pay and benefits for that position. But again, as I said, the county pays part of that, and the state through the University of Tennessee pays the rest.
I like how you added there in this case that he has a good plan for some things that benefits the county is giving work on the position.
There's other programs he himself are wanting to take on and do through the county that, with having to take on other responsibilities, he has not been able to do when they get this new position. And that's one of the reasons why UT has proposed this. They think there's benefits they can bring to the communities that another position would allow them to do. And so based on his request, and I thought it was a reasonable request, and I included it in the budget.
I think there were 20 counties out of 95 that would be receiving another person. Basically, this reflects 20% cost, so it's like getting a full-time person for 20% of the salary. So, I feel like if it happens.
Soil conservation stayed the same. Other economic development, you're going to see a year-over-year decrease, and that's tied to the THDA home grant. As I said last year, we had the $500,000 through the grant. We spent some of those funds down. We do see that going down in the future as we have more and more projects. come to fruition, and so that amount would be spent down, and that's why you see the year-over-year decrease. Since we spent some money out of it, that's not there in expenditure this year, but it's also offset on the revenue side, as that was a $500,000 grant from the state. Veteran services, again, the increase there is tied almost exclusively to the pay increase on the 2.5% and the 27 pay periods. Did go up $100 on the communication, and that's for the cell phone. That is a county cell phone. Other charges is just kind of a catch-all for the other services throughout the county government. A lot of it's tied to, you can see maintenance agreements, that went up $1,000, and that's tied to postal rate increase. We do have the postal rate machine there inside the office, and the increased postal services, postal rate that goes up. Artist Network, that is our IT provider, went up $200, and that is under a contract with Artist Network. We do have $900 that was not there before for random employee drug testing. We have not been doing that in the past, and we have put that in there to do that going forward. We left $65,000 in there, and you can see that is for electricity. We need that to really kind of keep up with other funds, and it's a line item that's reimbursed from other funds as we go forward, so we use it exclusively out of the 58,400 and then charge it to other funds, and they reimburse this fund. Yes, sir.
Going back to veterans, what's the days and hours of that veteran services?
Veteran services, I believe it's supposed to be 9 to 5 Monday and Friday. Was the last hours I was given, and I think that's what they've got on the board. Again, you see year over year, other charges, you see a drastic increase, and that's tied largely to an increase in our workers' compensation premiums. We budgeted $61,500. We got an adjustment throughout the year that was a very high amount and caught us all by surprise. So we see that we estimate we're going to spend $92,372, and I think that has already been paid, so that is a set number. So we went ahead and increased it to $95,000, hoping that this year we'll actually go down on our premium, but given the rate we saw last year, we went ahead and padded it a little bit. And that is, as I said, that is a big increase. That's over $30,000 increase. Contributions to other agencies, we do not have it. It was not in this current fiscal year's budget. We did not propose it for the 2021 budget. Employee benefits stayed the same. Miscellaneous, these are contributions, Chamber of Commerce, dues to the Tennessee County Service Association and the Greater National Regional Council. I believe both of those are tied to population in your community. So there has been an increase. GNRC has set a different due rate, so there's going to be a slight increase there. So year over year, it's a little under $1,000 increase. If you look at total expenditures, there's going to be an increase of about $12,000. We have $6,846,429 budgeted for this current fiscal year. We're proposing $6,858,325. But I would also point you to that estimated 1920 column. We are currently forecasting that our actual expenditures will end up somewhere around $4,838,866. So we see a drastic, almost a little over $2 million decrease in our expenditures over what we budgeted. Total revenues, when y'all set the expenditures from total revenue, we are proposing a deficit of $1,082,810. That is a decrease from $1,169,283 for the current fiscal year. But we also are forecasting an excess of revenue over expenditures for the current fiscal year of $845,129. We believe, as Mr. Ford asked at the beginning of the meeting, we believe the fund balance will go from June 30th of 2019. We had a fiscal, on the budget, we had budgeted $2,597,494. We're proposing $3,406,780. And our estimate right now for the current fiscal year, we believe we will finish up the year at about $4,611,908. And that'll be an excess increase in fund balance of about $722,813. Yes, Mr. Ford.
Any thoughts of trying to pay a little bit?
There was some thoughts to that. We looked at some of the debt. If we paid it off, we were saving less than really $2,000 if you go forward. And then, so we did look at it to see how much bang for our buck we would get, and there's really not much savings there.
Hopefully we'll be able to, as it gets more toward the end of the year, depending on what happens in our revenue.
Can't you use that $585,000 to pay off debt?
No,
Can't you do that?
no. It cannot be used for debt issuance, it cannot be used for new construction. I'll actually go through what it can be used for. It can be used for,
Long list of what you can't use it for, and a short list of what you can.
you can use it for IT hardware upgrades, you can use it for capital maintenance. This is primarily through roof, repair of renovation of roofing, mechanical and electrical systems. So this would include alterations that extend the life of the facilities, such as rectified code deficiencies, modifications for health and safety issues, repair to improve utility systems, repaving, roof repair, exterior fencing and lighting and repair, utility system upgrades. So the only thing we would have that go for is the water department, and they're kind of set on funding some of their improvements already. Road projects, this would be road and bridge maintenance, renovation and replacement projects, along with traffic control initiatives. And this says priority should be given to existing roads and bridges. Public safety, which would include ADA type projects, not including planning, as well as equipment purchases for law enforcement, fire and emergency response, school buses, and COVID-19 response if you needed to have expenditures tied to control and containment of COVID-19. And these are one-time expenditures that include supplies and equipment purchases, cleaning, emergency, food and shelter programs. Outside of that, you can't spend it for anything else other than those, and we actually have to submit an application to spend those funds. They tied it to very specific purposes. You can't use it for debt issuance, you can't use it for salary supplement. There's a whole list of stuff you can't use it for, and as Mr. Jewell alluded to, there's a very short list of what you can use it for, and you have to submit an application to get their approval to use it for that.
Okay. I think we're a little bit over. We'll be back here Thursday night. Hopefully we'll get into the school budget and the sheriff's budget, and the remainder of this, we can get into 115, whatever we have time to do. I appreciate everybody's indulgence. I know it's a little warm. We'll try to have a little cooler Thursday night. And I have a motion to adjourn.
About the steering committee, no
steering committee tomorrow. There's no business that we had to come up. It wasn't carried over from, unless you know something. No one's told me anything. I had that married. Other than all the stuff that we carried over from today.
This is just kind of collecting all
Why
of
is these two here on their clock? This one on their clock.
This is for ambulance service, and this is the sheriff's department.
I figured there's some reason for that.
Yeah, and that's, they're all having to go when they replace that system.
Is this money that you're talking about, the over the budget, but the budget?
No, these are items that are already included in the budget. I was putting these lists together, and projects we could submit for that local support grant.
Yeah.
That $500.
So that's all in there.
Well, we haven't approved any of it yet. I was just putting together a list of projects we could, I think, qualify for the grant.
Okay. I just wanted to be sure I understood.
Right, and the top list is the ones that I think would most likely get approved. The bottom ones are things that I think are either so small there's no sense in submitting it, or I don't think they'll qualify. But I tried to include all those big ticket items I saw.
I see you Thursday night. It's our big all the way to the creek.
We don't, I think we gave out all the